In this video, I'm going to tell you about how I came to the realization that the human body has got unlimited potential when it comes to randonneuring. Things that you think are not scientifically possible actually happen in randonneuring, and as such, you can just basically achieve any kind of success if you put your mind to it. I come from a medical background where we follow procedures based on the current scientific knowledge, and these procedures are all in a very logical, stepwise manner, such as if you try and save somebody's life who's had a cardiac arrest, there's a very specific set of procedures that you have to follow to actually save that person's life. You actually have to first make sure that they have a way of getting oxygen into the system. You then have to get the oxygen into the system, and then you have to circulate that oxygen through the body. And the way that you actually go about providing this to the patient actually occurs in a very stepwise, logical manner. And you can't switch them around. You can't first circulate them and then give them oxygen afterwards. It doesn't actually work that way. You have to follow the actual progression. I've tried to apply a logical approach to randonneuring in exactly the same manner. I must tell you that my experience with riding with Jermaine over the past 9 months has just been totally unbelievable, and it is from observing her progress in randonneuring that I realized that really there is no limit to any kind of success that you can achieve in randonneuring. So let me just tell you a little bit about Jermaine. So first of all, Jermaine is not somebody who likes to speak a lot in public and in front of the camera, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. She started riding about 3 years ago, and she just at that stage just learned to clip her shoes into the pedals, and then learned how to ride in a group and actually draft somebody, and then learned all the hand signals. So she learned the real absolute basics about 3 years ago. And with that, we went through the pandemic when we weren't able to ride in groups, and we had to ride on our own for much of the time. And that's when I got into randonneuring, because it's basically a solo sport. There's no interaction with other people. And so I enjoyed it so much, I tried to get her involved as well, but on an unofficial basis. So we would try to go out on long rides just for her to get the idea of what randonneuring was about and to keep her interested in cycling as well. And so what I tried to do was basically try to get her onto the 200-kilometer route that we would follow for our randonneuring, as a way of trying to, see if she has any interest in actually doing this. And we tried this about 3 times, and each time we aborted the attempt to do the 200-kilometer route. The first time, there was just way too much wind. The second time, the weather was just cold and unpleasant. And the third time, we had loose gravel on the road, and when one of the trucks came past, it sprayed the gravel up into her face, and she turned around behind me. I wasn't aware that she had turned around. After about a kilometer, I looked back and see where is she enjoying the ride, and she wasn't there. And I thought, oh my gosh, where is she? Has something happened to her? So I turned back, went back to look for her, and I found her riding back to Saskatoon, because she was just like, she cannot ride because of the gravel in her face, and she just doesn't want to do this. So that's why I was so surprised when this year in February, which is almost 6 months later, she decided, well, she wants to do this randonneuring. And of course, I did not quite believe that she would be interested in actually doing it. She did her first 200-kilometer randonneuring event at the beginning of May of this year. During that 200-kilometer event, in the last 50 kilometers of the event, she stopped every 10 kilometers for a rest, because either her pressure points were too painful or she was just way too exhausted. And so we would sit on the road and we would watch the clock, and we had enough time, so we said, okay, let's just stop, rest, get yourself together, ride another 10K, stop, rest, get yourself together. And so we made the last 50 kilometers, and we made it in a pretty decent time of just about 10 hours. Of course, I thought this is a once-off situation. I didn't believe that she would want to do anything more than that. But a week later, we did the same thing, but this time we faced extreme headwind conditions, and she did very much the same thing, rode the 150 kilometers, and the last 50 kilometers, we stopped every 10 kilometers for a rest to try to get to the finish line. And I asked her at the end of that, I said to her, how are you doing? And she says, this is the most difficult thing she's ever done. But at that stage, I think she said, I don't have a choice. the vehicle, our vehicle is parked 50 kilometers away. There's no other way to get there. Either she has to sit and wait for me while I ride back to get the vehicle and then come pick her up, or she's just got to take short breaks and actually get to the end of that 200 kilometers. I really had no confidence that she would actually want to go any further. However, she actually did that. So 2 weeks later, she did a 300 kilometer ride. And exactly the same situation happened. In the last 50 kilometers, we stopped multiple times for her to actually rest the pressure points, get her breath back, and finally make it to the end. And I asked her, I said, you've now done a 300 kilometer ride 2 weeks after really just struggling to finish a 200 kilometer. How is that possible? And she says, you know, the first 200 kilometers weren't as difficult, and it's the last 100 kilometers that she actually had a bit of difficulty, and she thinks she can do some more. But she still found the 300 extremely difficult. And 2 weeks later, she attempted the 400 kilometer and had exactly the same situation, where in the last 50 kilometers, we had to stop multiple times. And we finally made it to the end, and I asked her, how are you doing? How are you managing with this 400 kilometer brevet? She says, you know, the first 300 kilometers weren't that bad, but the last 100 kilometers were really difficult, you know. And 3 weeks after that, we did a 600 kilometer, and she had exactly the same situation. She rode the 400 kilometers, and then while I was still trying to get up and get ready in the morning, she had already left the hotel and was tackling the final 200 kilometers of that 300 kilometers. And when I caught up to her, she said, you know, she feels okay, but she's just extremely tired. And once again, when we came to the last 50 kilometers, we stopped multiple times once again, gave her lots of time to rest, but she eventually finished it. And so within a space of about 6 to 8 weeks, she had gone from just about finishing a 200 kilometer to just about finishing a 600 kilometer. But in actual fact, if you look at the graph of her progress, it was just exponential, and each time she had exactly the same situation. And after the 600 kilometers, I must admit, you know, I didn't think that she would want to go any further, because going from 600 kilometers up to 1,000 kilometers is a huge jump. I didn't think that she was physiologically adapted enough in that short period of time for her body to actually cope with actually doing a 1,000 kilometers. And that's why she had lots of advice from many different people, and I know some people were very conservative and said, no, rather give it more time, give your body time to recover and also to get stronger before you attempt the 1,000. Some said, you've got to just see what your body can do, and some were just all-out support. And I left it entirely up to her, and 5 days before the start of the 1,000, she said she wants to do this 1,000 kilometer brevet. Okay, so I was totally surprised. I did not expect it at all. And at the same time, I tried to play down our expectations. I said, let's just go and try to do it, not thinking about the time. We'll have a schedule and we'll have a program as to how to do it, and we'll follow the formula that I've been talking about previously, and we'll just try and see what we can do. But there's no expectations to do it within the time. And if we need to take an extra day or two to actually do it, we'll do it really slowly and just try and see if we can do the distance and see how long it actually takes us to do the distance. And if we don't do the 1,000 kilometers, it's also fine. It's just, let's see, how you feel along the route and see how comfortable you are. From my background, once again, I told you, I think in terms of small progressive increases in exercise activity with a very specific schedule of how to actually do that. I made up a little schedule for her to ride, and I said, okay, we're going to do 20 kilometers per hour, including all rest stops, and that we're going to follow this for the first 400 kilometers and then have a rest. Over about 5 hours, we'll do another 300 kilometers at 20 kilometers per hour, average speed, including all rest stops, have another rest. And then for the final 300 kilometers, we'll follow a similar schedule of 20 kilometers per hour, including all rest stops, and slowly trying to make it to the end Of course, this is just a guide, and of course it will change according to the conditions and how her body actually feels. We actually got started with that 1,000 kilometer, and at the start of the 1,000 kilometer, we already had problems. As we were starting the ride, we could see electrical activity in the sky. We had a huge electrical storm, and we were following this storm all the way east. So for about 250 kilometers, we followed the storm, and the storm just kept ahead of us by a few kilometers. We could hear the thunder, we could see the lightning, but we felt relatively safe. We didn't have any hair rising on our backs. So we completed the first 250 kilometers, and then we turned towards the west, and we headed to what we thought might be our next rest stop. We, once again, as we were riding, she seemed to be quite comfortable until about 350 kilometers, and then she started to slow down in the last 50 kilometers. However, we made it to our first rest stop at about 400 kilometers, which maybe just a little bit less than 400 kilometers, but roughly speaking. And we were relatively on schedule at that time, riding at just 20 kilometers per hour. So, we were feeling confident at that stage, and we said, okay, let's just see what the next day actually does. No great expectations. We'll just take it easy, try and see if we can continue for another 300 kilometers at the speed of 20 kilometers per hour. But the second part had a lot more elevation gain, and the temperature was extremely high. Now, I know that it doesn't sound high for most people from where I come from, of 35 degrees. It's not really high for people from Africa, or from South Africa at least, but for some reason I think our bodies have acclimatized to the Canadian weather, and at 35 degrees we really struggled in the heat. So we lost about 2 to 3 hours in that segment, riding the middle 300 kilometer segment. And so when we got to our second rest point, we were behind schedule. But at the same time, by then, she had gone further than we had ever anticipated. By now, she had covered 760 kilometers, or 400 in the first bit, and just more than 300 in the second bit. So it's 760 kilometers. It was a huge achievement. Okay, so I said to her, at this stage, just be happy. You've done it at 20 kilometers per hour average speed. Whatever happens from now, it's good. You've achieved what you need to do. Exceed that 600 kilometer mark. Mentally, you can go further than that. And let's just see what happens in the last segment. And in the last segment, of course, we had a severe headwind heading back to Saskatoon, with a tornado warning as well. And once again, quite a lot of elevation gain for Saskatchewan, because this is one of the flattest provinces on earth. And at the same time, combined with the wind, the heat, the tornadoes, it was really a challenge. And we actually got through the final 240 kilometers relatively well. However, in the last 50 kilometers, she had exactly the same situation, where she really struggled in the last 50 kilometers. Every 10 kilometers, she would have to stop, rest, get off the bike, just give her body a break, and then get back on and keep going.
Thanks, it was fantastic. You did it.
Congratulations to you, my darling. How does it feel?
Oh, fantastic. I really feel like
it is. This is like... There was no doubt. She was successful. She completed her 1,000 kilometers, and we were extremely excited about that. But at the same time, if you look at the graph of her progress in distance, in a 10-week period, she's gone from struggling to finish a 200 kilometer to now being able to ride 1,000 kilometers, and each time having difficulty in the last 50 kilometers of the ride. Now, I know from my medical background that there's no way that in 10 weeks you can have the physiological changes to allow you to progress so quickly. I mean, I understand that your body will produce a lot more capillaries to deliver oxygen to the muscles. The muscles will hypertrophy, get stronger, get more resilient. Your heart will get stronger, and your circulatory system would dilate to allow the blood to flow much quicker. But for all of that to happen within 10 weeks and allow her to achieve that, I don't think it's possible. I cannot believe that you can have so many changes in such a short time to actually get there. I think the clue comes from that last 50 kilometers, because that's the most consistent thing that actually happens. I think that it's her pure determination that actually allows her to ride the distance. But when she gets to the last 50 kilometers, I think the realization of what she's doing probably sets in. And I think that's why she's got the difficulty. And I think that's when she realizes, she's so close to finishing something she hasn't been able to do in previously, that it dawns on her, and I think that makes her fatigued. And so I think that it's purely determination and willpower that actually gets you through this brevet riding. I don't think that the physiological adaptations are actually the main driving force. Certainly you can do that, but I think you need a much longer period of exercise and training and endurance to actually do this. But I think in such a short time, it's pure determination. And I know if I look back at where she comes from previously, struggling to finish 160 kilometers last year to doing 1,000 kilometers this year, I can tell you that if Jermaine can do it, anybody can do it. There's no way that you are not able to do it. And I think that if you can do 1,000 kilometers after 10 weeks of training, then I think your potential, and I think her potential as well, is unlimited. I don't see anything stopping her from riding 1,200 kilometers, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 kilometers. Because if you have the right mindset, I think you can go an infinite distance of riding. Of course, I would always go back to having a formula of trying to do it in a very logical, progressive way, and also have a really good bank of training before attempting these activities. But I think you must have a really strong mindset, really strong will, with lots of determination to succeed. And if you've got that, it's unlimited. So if there's one thing you're going to take from this video, is that you need to know that you have to have the right mindset to actually achieve in randonneuring. And if you get that mindset, you've got unlimited opportunities and possibilities. We're going to do a Coulee Grand Randonneur in the next 3 weeks. I'll let you know how it goes. It's going to be a lot more challenging. We're going to have 10,000 meters of climbing to do, with possible lots of headwind, lots of extreme heat in Minnesota, part of the Coulee Challenge. I'll let you know how it goes. I am cautiously optimistic that after this 1,000 kilometers that Jermaine has a good chance of actually completing that. I think mentally she is probably in the best position to actually do that. Hopefully her body actually follows that this time. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to once again go with the formula. I'll tell you all about that in the next video. So until the next time I speak to you, stay safe and keep riding. Cheers.